I read this yesterday, and it came from an elected official, and it said, quote, if this was happening, referring to what's happening now politically, in any other country, the State Department would be calling this a coup attempt. The president in hiding, president, no pictures of him, letterhead that doesn't have a presidential seal, a signature that's been underlined that the president doesn't typically do, and yet we're acting like this is normal. Joe Biden was forced out. There was something that happened to him, whether it was medically,
Joe Biden was
when he was
forced
flying
out
back
by
from
his
Vegas.
own brain, Ben. Joe Biden's brain did a coup on Joe Biden.
Leave. He didn't want to leave. He did not want to leave. Days before, he was saying, I'm in this, I'm in this. And I think this was clearly the cabinet and other Democrats that said, you're either going to leave or we're going to force you out. You are done. And now we've got a president that's going to talk to the nation tomorrow night. I'm sorry. This happens in another country. We'd all be talking about it this way, but we're acting like it's normal. This is not normal.
What's so funny about you, Ben? What's so funny about Republicans is that this would never happen because their God Emperor Donald Trump can literally do whatever he wants, and no Republican would ever step out of line to criticize him. No one would step out of line to say you shouldn't be president anymore. And you're so jealous that Democrats actually hold their own accountable. You're so jealous that we'd actually be like, hey, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't run again.
I assure you, I'm not jealous.
The entire party right. It's just so funny. It's like, if you lose in November, you're going to run him again in 2028.
You tried to put him in prison. You tried to take his property. And then they tried to kill him. I'm not jealous of anybody that celebrates that.
Who tried to kill him? Ben, who tried to kill Trump?
A radical young 20-year-old tried to kill him. And everybody's like, well, I love this the other day. They're like, well, what's the motive? He wanted to kill Donald Trump. That's the motive.
Ben, careful. You said they. They tried to kill him. Who's they?
People that hate Trump. People that hate Trump.
Wait.
That's what I'm saying. It's very simple.
A 20-year-old kid did it, right? A demented, lonely 20-year-old kid
who hated Donald Trump. People that hate Trump, that want to put him in jail, that want to take all of his things. They tried to overthrow the will of the people in the first election.
It's day.
Walsh,
on,
Walsh, go back to the very beginning.
Let me jump in. I just want to say this. We don't actually know the motivation of the shooter, but if you want to look for blame as to how this 20-year-old deranged kid with an AR-15 was able to unload 8 bullets at President Trump, it's because the Secret Service dropped the ball in such spectacular fashion and left President Trump exposed so badly, which could have led to him being killed and should have done, really. It was a miracle that he survived, that the director of Secret Service, Kim Cheadle, has today resigned or probably been fired.
A week later.
So that is probably where my main blame would go, is their failure to protect the president. Now, listen, hang on a second, Joe. We've got to say goodbye to Ben to be respectful to his time.
Thanks,
Ben,
guys.
thank you very much indeed for coming back on Uncensored. I appreciate it. We're joined by Chris Murray from the Chris and Harry Unplugged, and I'll come to CJ Pearson as well. But Dave Smith, you've been sitting next to me here, even though we're looking down barrels of different cameras. You wanted to get in there. You were aghast about something. I'm not quite sure what it was.
Well, look, okay, there's just a couple things here. First of all, I do understand why people object to the use of the term coup. However, for Joe to say, well, this was just Joe Biden made a decision, that's pretty misleading also. The truth is that Joe Biden did make his decision. His decision was to stay in the race. He made this very, very clear. Up to Sunday morning, on the Sunday morning news shows, campaign surrogates were going out saying he's staying in the race. It's Biden versus Trump. Now, it's not exactly that he made a decision. Big donors and political operatives and the corporate press all turned their back on him and said, we are going to force your hand. And essentially, he was forced out. On top of that, look, I'm not claiming to know anything that we don't know. It is incredibly bizarre that the President of the United States of America, a few weeks out from the convention, decided to pull out of the race and did not address the nation. Now, you can say he had COVID. I don't care. He's the sitting president of the United States. For it to come out on personal stationery and then in a tweet, he endorses Kamala Harris, and now we're being told we're going to hear from him tomorrow night. That is just incredibly bizarre, and it does... it is understandable why people speculate about what was really going on behind the scenes. The truth is that none of us really know what type of internal pressure was put on Joe Biden, what type of threats were made. So the fact that people would speculate about that, I think, is totally reasonable. On the other point, the idea that Republicans are would never question Donald Trump. He's their God emperor. They would never think about another nominee. The problem with this this narrative from the left is that it just reality flies in the face of it. Look, there was a National Review entire issue dedicated to never Trump in 2016. Mitt Romney, the previous nominee, came out and gave a speech, anyone but Donald Trump. This year, all of the big donor money was going to DeSantis and Nikki Haley. All of the powerful forces within the Republican establishment have been trying to get anybody else except Donald Trump. The difference between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is that Donald Trump, however you feel about him, has tens of millions of Americans who love him and want him to be the nominee. And there's no Democrat who has anything like that.
I agree. CJ, let me bring in CJ, who's been waiting patiently. Hang on, Francesco, I'll come to you in a moment. CJ Pearson, can you tell me what brat means, given it's the word that's all over the news, and you're probably the only one young enough on the panel to know what it means? Apart from Francesco.
As the resident Gen Zer here, it seems as if Kamala Harris is having a brat girl summer, which actually means that she actually doesn't know what's going on. It's a state of deliriousness. It's a state of delusion. It's like you're just going along to get along, but that's kind of how Kamala Harris has led her entire political career. She's just been a coconut falling from a coconut tree. She just lands in a place and hopes that the American people will go along with it as this coordination has taken place. Dave absolutely hit all the right points. Donald Trump went through a spirited Republican primary process where he knocked every single one of them out one by one. What's happening right now, which is so ironic and so hypocritical, is that the party that is supposedly so against voter suppression is now disenfranchising millions of Democrat voters who voted for Joe Biden to be their nominee. They bullied a senile old man out of office just so that they could have a chance at winning in November. It's disgusting, it's wrong, it's anti-democratic, and dare I say it's a threat to democracy.
Yo, you should vote Joe Biden. Vote Joe. You should bring him back into the race.
Hang on.
Defend him.
Hang on. Let me go to Chris. From Chris and Harry Unplugged. He's also been waiting a long time to get in here. Probably even younger, so knows even more what brat means. Kamala Harris, I mean, what do you make of the new threat to Donald Trump? He's got to tear up his entire playbook, which was to beat an old guy, to now go after a much younger black woman. It's a completely different proposition for Trump. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Republicans and Trump are panicking, and I think you've seen it in the last 10 or 20 minutes. If they want to run, if the PR play for Republicans wants to be that Democrats are a threat to democracy, that Democrats are doing something undemocratic, Donald Trump and Republicans like CJ Pearson want to run on that, I think Democrats are in a great position in November. They have nothing. And to the last point about, everybody in this party has to bend the knee to Donald Trump. CJ Pearson would not be sitting where he is if he didn't go and praise Donald Trump and have a Trump banner in his header. I mean, CJ's somebody who in his primary election that he lost, he called voter fraud against his Republican counterpart. And so, in the Democrat world, we've had fierce debates about our candidate, and it's been hard. But we have values and morals that actually matter over just bowing the knee to one man. And so I think Democrats are in a great position, and she's clearly popular because she's fundraised more money than anyone in political history.
I wouldn't expect to hear anything less from a Democrat, from a DNC paid show like Chris Mallory. But what I'll say to this is that Kamala Harris is nothing more than a pandering shadow. And she is in the same situation that Joe Biden is in. She is not running the show whatsoever. And what she'll realize is that Brat Girl Summer will not be enough to change the hearts and minds of America's young people, because under Kamala Harris, what you won't have is a Brat Girl Summer. What you will have is a Broke Girl Summer as a result of the runaway inflation that we're experiencing under the Biden-Harris administration, as a result of the record high gas prices we've seen under their administration. Their leadership is absent of any leadership.
Then you got nothing to worry about, CJ. Now, then, CJ, if you're right, if Kamala Harris is nothing, you should be smiling. You should be celebrating right now. You got nothing to worry about. Hosanna.
I am celebrating.
Trump's gonna win
I am
last
smiling.
night. Good.
I mean, yeah, that's what I think is sort of just incredible about just two things I'll push back on. You know, the idea that it's a coronation. Once again, in 2020, panel, how many primary challengers did incumbent President Donald Trump have?
Me
None.
and two other.
Why?
Bill
Because he was the
Bill
incumbent
Weld ran against
president.
him.
This is an incumbency, right? And so the idea that this is like, how dare they, it's not democratic. No, Harris is the effing vice president, been on the ticket since Joe Biden was elected back in 2020. Obviously, people thought he was going to be the incumbent and run again. Then his brain did a coup on his body and himself and his whole campaign. And here we are where we are. The other thing about the donors, I think it's very funny, because the reason that Donald Trump on the other side picked your boy J.D. Vance, even though he hates facial hair, is because J.D. Vance came along with a bunch of venture capitalists, guys like Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, David Horowitz, to absolutely help this campaign out with all of their AI-funded tech crypto billionaire money that wants to put us all out of a job. In 3 years, this will just be a panel of AI experts, and honestly, God bless them.
Well, we have Chris Bowery on the panel.
I
so
don't
guess
think there's
we're
any
ready to go.
robot in the world that could mirror what you're like, Francesca, I have to say. I think your position is safe.
True Brad.
It has
True
to be a
Brad
very
over
sophisticated AI. CJ, let me just ask CJ, and I'll come to Dave to also join in on this. When you look at Kamala Harris, like I said, if Trump goes ad hominem, which is his normal preferred method of attack on any opponent, I think it could backfire. However, there is lots of stuff on Kamala's record which I think he can really pick her off about. Most notably, the fact that she's been the immigration czar for the United States of America for the last 2 years, when immigration has been running completely out of control. And if I was Trump, I'd just keep asking her, didn't you just have one job? Wasn't that the job you had to do? And even when she was asked, have you been to the border? She came out with this extraordinary response, well, I haven't been to Europe either, as if that was anything relevant to the discussion. So I think the way she's handled the one thing she was given special responsibility for, if I'm the Republicans, I'm going after that morning, noon and night.
No, Piers, I think you're absolutely right. I think we do, find ourselves, in a hole when we continue to talk things about, her sexual history or all those things. I think there's no need to discuss those things. I think there are a lot of other things that are disqualifying about Kamala Harris, including her blatant hypocrisy. She locked up countless of nonviolent young black men for smoking weed, only to go on the Breakfast Club and brag about how much weed she smoked. This is also someone, as you said, who was in control of our national security as it relates to the border and absolutely dropped the ball there time and again. She has shown that she is not deserving of promotion. The only reason that we are even having this conversation about her as a nominee of the Democrat Party, aside from a coordination, is because she's a DEI hire. She was a DEI hire when she became vice president because he had to get black women on board with this campaign. They couldn't skip over Kamala Harris because they were afraid of upsetting black women if they did so. That is exactly why she bided her time. She covered up the fact that Joe Biden was mentally unfit and mentally unwell and mentally incapable of carrying on the banner of the Democrat Party because she knew that she could not win an open Democratic primary herself. She knew that she did not have the fortitude to do so. And we saw that. It was demonstrable in 2020. She didn't win a single primary state. She didn't even make it to Iowa, Piers. And if you think that if she can't beat Pete Buttigieg and all of those folks, Tulsi Gabbard, you think that she can beat Donald J. Trump after what he has endured, after the feckless prosecutions, after the attempted assassination, then, I've got some great real estate in Alaska to tell you. It's insane.
Okay, I want to bring in Dave Smith about one particular point. I saw one of the polls today, which was matching up Kamala Harris against Trump. Significantly amongst young people, a big gap between them. And a lot of that people are putting down to the fact that young people actually did feel that what Trump did when he was shot was a remarkably ballsy thing. And it became a really big social media sort of emblem of defiance and strength and courage and all these things, which were things that maybe young people hadn't associated with Trump. But suddenly they saw this image of him punching the air, blood all over his face, surviving an assassination attempt. And they thought, you know what, that's, as Mark Zuckerberg said, probably the first time in his life, that was badass by Trump. How significant do you think the failed assassination attempt is going to be, particularly young people?
Well, I think that it helped Donald Trump tremendously. I think it's one of those things where it's like I remember going to the opera with my wife, and I've never been to the opera before. But when you hear like an unbelievably talented singer at the opera, you're just like, whoa, that's incredible. It's almost an involuntary reaction. And there is something about seeing someone while there's bullets spraying, they don't even know if they're hit yet, and they're given the fist. Even if you despise Donald Trump, I think most people would admit, yeah, that was a good moment for him. He looked good there. I think to the point that you guys were making before, again, look, I'm a libertarian, and so I already know I'm going to lose. So I kind of have an advantage on some of you guys. Like, I'm not married to either side here, but I think people blind themselves with narratives when they're all in on one camp. And to hear you guys, the Democrats on the panel saying like, oh, the Republicans are in freak out mode or something like that. Guys, you literally just removed your candidate to go with another candidate after years of pretending that the emperor had clothes, while the rest of us were all talking about the guy who was clearly suffering through severe cognitive decline. Finally, you guys had to admit it. You pulled him out there. You're now going with a deeply unpopular vice presidential candidate. Look, good luck, but it's a big uphill battle. The fact is that the spin now is that it was just Joe Biden's age. That was the only issue that he slowed down. The truth is that if you look at every single poll, the two big issues here are the economy and immigration. I'm not a kid. I don't understand any of your black girl summer references. I don't know what brat means, okay? I'm a dad in my 40s. We've lived through, over the last couple of years, the worst price inflation in my life and the worst immigration crisis in my lifetime. This is a major problem. Kamala Harris is married to this administration, and Donald Trump's got a lot of red meat to run against. That's what this election's going to come down to, and it favors Trump.
Yeah, I agree. Chris, do you want to respond to that? Let me get Chris to respond, then I'll come to you, Joe.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say, as a Gen Zer, I just disagree with this. This consistent notion that Kamala Harris is unpopular. Again, yesterday we saw the largest fundraising day in American political history through Act Blue. Grassroots donors, $5, $10, $25. Gen Z is excited for a candidate objectively that's younger, a woman, and somebody who's been like a champion on things like climate and gun reform, et cetera. And I think that Gen Z specifically is a generation, me, myself, I've never seen America at peace. It's been nothing but chaos since I was born in 2002.
Thank you, President Joe Biden,
and we're looking back now and saying, wow, this is really at a boiling point. And what has caused this? And what's caused this is Trump and the MAGA movement doing nothing but pushing division all the time with the lies and the disgusting, hateful rhetoric. And I think that Gen Z is fired up to move on, to get candidates that actually care about us.
And Piers, I think one of the bigger issues.
Let me ask you this. You talk about hateful rhetoric from the right to the left, and that definitely has been. It's indisputable. But what about the hateful rhetoric from the left to the right? For example, for 8 years, I've heard people on the left, from the top down, refer to Trump as the new Hitler, as Adolf Hitler, as if somehow he's presiding over a Nazi-style regime, which, if you're too young to remember, perhaps, but the Nazis killed 12 million people, including murdering 6 million Jews in a Holocaust. So it's hard to imagine a more offensive or vile slur or more hateful rhetoric than to compare Donald Trump, who's done none of those things, to Adolf Hitler. So do you accept that people on the left have been just as guilty of hateful rhetoric and contributing to the general toxicity of the debate as people on the right?
Sure, but I do want to point out that, you know, the person who's actually called Donald Trump's America's Hitler is J.D. Vance, his current running mate. J.D. Vance was someone who is very staunchly
that was wrong too.
If you look at elected officials across the board, Democrats have consistently been the ones to calm the tensions. And look, I disagree with calling him America's Hitler, but if I call Donald Trump a dictator or a threat to democracy, I think it's almost dishonest to not call him that. This is somebody who tried to overturn an election he didn't win with evidence that he didn't win it. And so I don't understand how it's hateful to say that he's a threat to democracy or he's moving us toward authoritarianism. And again, I think that the fact that J.D. Vance is the one who said things like he's America's Hitler goes to the fact that, you know, you have to give up all your morals and all your values and bow to Donald Trump in this party.
Piers, that
all right,
is
let me get a response
insane
to that from CJ.
You know, Piers, that's absolutely insane. For Chris to sit here and say that it's dishonest for him not to call Donald Trump a dictator is absolutely laughable. Maybe if Chris actually visited a country with a real dictatorship, he would realize that under a system of governance where real dictators did exist, the conversation, the debate, the discourse that we're having wouldn't even at all be possible. But that's all they traffic in, is all of this hyperbolic rhetoric that has actually no semblance of reality, because they don't actually know how to defeat the president, because he delivered for the American people time and again during his presidency.
CJ,
we had the lowest black unemployment rate. We had record economic growth. We had a secure southern border. All of those things are policy wins that Joe Biden can't brag about. It's exactly why Kamala Harris has to talk about a black girl summer. But here's the reality. Under Kamala Harris, you're going to have a broke girl summer, a broke girl fall,
you said that already.
Winter,
you said that.
Spring. That is what their policies do.
Come on.
You said that already.
Stop.
We heard you.
Yeah, you've said that already. Great. You've got 100 more days to say that. God bless you. Your candidate's winning. We'll see if Kamala Harris can catch him or not. Piers, just a couple quick points. To Dave Smith, I appreciate the fact that he's a dad in his 40s. I'm a dad in my 60s. Look, I don't belong to either party. I'm not a Democrat. Dave and I probably agree on most policy issues. The difference is I think Trump is a unique existential threat to our democracy. So I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is. Piers, to you, you made a great point early. You said we're living in unprecedented times. A month ago, an 81-year-old candidate for president had a debate and showed that he was not at all ready to continue to be a candidate. He was too old. And the entire Democratic Party rightfully panicked. It is a party process. It's not an election. The party convinced him to step aside, and he made that final decision. This is how the process in each party works. There's nothing undemocratic about it.
Yeah. I just want to say that I think it is wrong to compare Donald Trump to Hitler.
Yeah, Francesca,
I agree. I think it's absolutely wrong. If you're going to compare him to someone, it's obviously Mussolini, okay? Much more of a showman, great jawline. Wow. I think that is where it happens. And look, Donald Trump by his own admission said he would be a dictator, but only on day one. So guys, let's just listen to him, take him at his word.
But you know the problem, Francesca, listen, here's the problem. Funny though your quip just was, and maybe you meant it or not, the truth is, I've just noticed that people on the left, when it comes to Donald Trump, they lose their collective minds. The reality about the checks and balances of the American democratic process was they were actually very robust. Trump may not have accepted the result of the 2020 election, but he's not in the White House. He's not president of the United States. He had to go that day.
Have you read?
Bang, out the door. So the checks and balances did work.
I mean, I don't understand. We know you talk to Trump regularly, Piers. I'm surprised you don't have a white bandage on your ear right now, honestly. And we've seen and we've read all 920 pages of Project 2025, and in it says that instead of the police, the military should be patrolling the streets.
Which the president has disavowed time and again.
That is,
the president has said that he does not support Project 2025.
Even though every single person who wrote it was a former Trump advisor. Come on, give me a break. Stephen Miller is in
Trump himself has said that he does not support Project 2025. We're supposed to think that you believe more about what President Trump believes and what he has said himself he believes. It's
CJ,
crazy.
You know what's in his heart. You know what's in his heart.
If you want to see what President Trump believes, go to DonaldJTrump.com, read Agenda 47.
What's in his heart?
Read Agenda 47.
How about this? How about we don't go with what's in his heart and we go with the 4-year track record? I mean, the problem here is that, and look, to your point, obviously the rhetoric on both sides has been elevated tremendously over the last few years. At very divisive times in this country. And both sides are guilty of this or right to do it, however you look at it. But people do lose their collective minds when it comes to Donald Trump. Look, these comparisons, the idea that he's some Hitlerian figure is ridiculous. Even the comparisons to Mussolini, this is all silliness. Donald Trump was president for 4 years, okay? He did a lot of things bad. I was a big critic of his foreign policy. His fiscal policy was very bad. I do not think he handled COVID well. But these are problems kind of similar to previous presidents before that. His rhetoric is much more bombastic than other presidents were, okay? That's the reality that we're dealing in. And the fact that you guys have to take this up to 11, as if there's some existential threat to the republic that isn't, by the way, you want to know the real existential threat to, hold on, just one second, let me finish. The real existential threat to our republic right now is that debt is over, the interest on our debt is overtaking our entire budget. And this is something that Democrats and Republicans are both guilty of. So they don't want to talk about that because it's, it condemns both of them. But the reality of the situation is that whatever happened on January 6th that got out of control, there certainly was violence there. Donald Trump got on a plane and went back to Mar-a-Lago. He was never calling in the military. There was never a chance that he was going to institute a dictatorship in the United States of America. This is all election nonsense. And I'll tell you something, Democrats, you better figure out something else to run against, because this whole Kamala Harris is a prosecutor and Donald Trump is a felon. The American people have rejected this already. No one cares about these charges that wouldn't have been brought to any other former president, okay? This isn't going to do it. You got to have something of substance. The problem is what you guys could actually run against is that Donald Trump was such a disaster through all of 2020, and he kept Fauci on the job, and he kept Americans locked down. The problem is you guys were criticizing him for not locking down harder. So I don't know what angle you're going to find. There's plenty of flaws on him. The problem is you guys are worse on most of the issues he's bad on.
David.